Hi, everyone. This is the Leadership with Heart podcast, and this is Heather Loenser, your host. Employee experience is powered by emotions. Managers and or leaders within organizations get to choose which emotions they unleash from within the people they lead. Leaders, meaning supervisors or above in an organization, drive much of the positive or negative emotions by their actions or inactions, their words, or what they fail to say. When a manager chooses their words and their actions carefully, they exhibit great emotional intelligence. These managers are often thought of as leaders who care, or as I like to call them, leaders with heart. This special brand of leader drives engagement and loyalty simply by being themselves. Are these leaders perfect? Absolutely not. It is in their awareness and sharing of some of their imperfections that we realize their brilliance. In this podcast, I ask you to see yourself in the stories my guests tell about times when they were not the best versions of themselves, but how they used their hearts to guide them to a place of deeper connection with their teams and heightened leadership prowess. Enjoy. Hi, everyone. It's Heather with the Leadership with Heart podcast. And today I'm really excited to have a little bit different format today. And I'm going to be welcoming Garth Jordan and Heather Loenser on. And they were the leaders from an event I was a keynote speaker at. And I was really taken by their high level of emotional intelligence. And you all know that this is really the foundation of Leadership with Heart, is the leaders who are really more emotionally intelligent. You might think of them as a soft side leader, but really they're the ones who do the hard stuff to keep people engaged. So now, why I have you specifically on. So with what was interesting, I had a lot of experience and exposure to Heather, the two Heathers, the dynamic duos. And when I first talked to her, she just seemed a really good pulse on the community. And I just felt like she was really emotionally aware, self-aware, and aware of what was happening around her, and then could empathize with the people that were inside the organization. And they'll talk about where that's at here in a minute. And then with Garth, I was able to see him interacting in a chat and just all his responses, and then his actual talk before mine. And it was just super impressed by the finesse, but the also real accessibility to the people that were there. As a leader, it just spoke to me. I was like, oh my gosh, these are leaders of heart right here. So welcome to the show. That's why you're here.
Thank you, Heather. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Heather.
So, yes. So where are both of you right now anyway in your leadership journey?
That's a good question, journey-wise. I know I'm not at point A, but I pretty much doubt I'm even remotely close to point Z. Probably the simple answer is somewhere dead in the middle. The last 10 years for me have been, or 12 years or so. So just so that your folks know, I'm 54. So that just gives you kind of a picture of where I'm at age-wise. And I started working right out of high school, kind of kicked out of the house almost at about age 18. For reasons that will not be recorded for posterity. So I've been on my own for a long time in that regard. But so it's been a pretty long, almost 40-year work journey now for me. But the last 12 years, I've been in C-level roles very purposefully to try to get if you will, a diverse view of what the internal operations of an organization looks like. So I've been a COO, a CFO, a chief strategy officer, and now a CEO. And not to make it sound like that's meant to be impressive, but I think the diversity of experience, number one, has been a significant part of my leadership journey. Even prior to those roles, I've been all over the map, and it's been a lot of fun. I crave that type of experiential diversity. So that's one big ticket item that I expect to be part of my ongoing journey. The other that's more recent, probably in the last, I'd call it 7 to 10 years, is I'm not a natural empath, unlike Dr. Loenser here, my compatriot. She's a natural empath. The first half of my career, I was the cowboy, my way or the highway, and I wasn't the most empathetic person. But I got into design thinking in about 10 years ago, and it really did change my life. And what I've learned for me is that empathy, leading with empathy, designing with empathy, and frankly, putting empathy kind of at my epicenter of my journey has not only been important for me personally, it's been important for me professionally and just spiritually in terms of understanding people I work with and understanding people I'm designing products and services for. And the power of empathy is just really taken over my journey. So, and I can talk about more about that later, but I got to hand it over to Heather.
Yeah, I know. Actually, what organization do you lead right now?
The American Animal Hospital Association, we call it AHA. So when we start saying AHA later on, you'll know what that means.
Okay, thanks. Heather?
Wow. Well, I grew up in veterinary hospitals. I'm a veterinarian. And like most veterinarians, I wanted to be one starting as a child, which started my role in academia of just trying to absorb as much information as I could and learn from as many leaders as I could. At the time, they were small business leaders. When I was cleaning cages and walking dogs when I was 14, which is kind of where we all start. And then it transitioned over to professors when it came to learning how to do research and learning how to learn large volumes of information. And then when I got out of veterinary school and emerged, veterinarians are put in leadership roles right from the start, even though they don't want them, because they're in a small business that runs off of their brain, like dentists and physicians. And so we are looked at as de facto leaders, even if we don't think of ourselves as that. We want to be fixing the animals. That's why we're here. A lot of us don't particularly enjoy people. If we had enjoyed people and medicine, we would have become physicians. But so there's a little bit of a disconnect, I think, when we graduate from veterinary school and realize that there's people everywhere. And so I got into a lot of communication training, and that has allowed my empathy that I was given or developed as a child. That's allowed me to then communicate how I'm feeling and communicate what the feelings I see in you as another human. I'm also very good at interpreting how animals are feeling, and that is incredibly useful on the floor. But now in my role at the American Animal Hospital Association, I use my empathy to try to serve my colleagues, and
Wow.
And that is continuing to be quite an adventure.
Yeah. People are absolutely an adventure, aren't they? And it's interesting because you're like the animal whisperer and the people whisperer. And
Yeah.
and I'm the same way. I'm an empath, and I was just talking to someone about this the other day, that it can get super exhausting to be the person who is just always feeling other people's fears and pains. And I think what I learned recently, and this really was a learning for me, and I may have even spoken about it on that second breakout, which is this idea of compassion. That compassion is really action given after you are empathetic. And I always just thought of empathy as all of it together, because that's kind of what I do. But in the end, I learned, like I said, that compassion is really that action. And so, like when we're talking about, some of the stuff we were talking about, even in that talk on diversity, equity, inclusion, I was talking about compassion. Really, that's like the solidarity and the taking action, the allyship to all of the things, right? So when we think about any of this stuff, that's when we see someone's pain, an animal's pain, a person's pain, it's, how we see it, we feel it. What are we going to do about it, right?
Well, that's actually, Heather, that's something with the animal pain part. I am not afraid of seeing an animal in pain. And when I'm in my hospital, right? Because I know I can fix it. So I'm the kind of person that charges, to the front door when I hear that an animal's been hit by a car and is coming into the hospital. Like, I am there to get it, grab it, take it with me, give it medications, get it comfortable again. What I have to learn is seeing other people in pain. I really like what you said about compassion, because if I am just stick to empathy and not actual action, I just end up crawling down in the hole with the person who's feeling sometimes positive feelings, because you can be empathetic about something exciting, right? But we tend to be empathetic. I think as empaths, we tend to be more empathetic about things that are a little heavier. And so without adding action to it, I can just get stuck in the dark hole with you, and you're not alone. And that's great. Mm-hmm. But what are we going to do? So I thank you for bringing up the compassion idea. That's very helpful.
Yeah. I think, I don't know. It was a recent learning, and I can't feel like I'm learning all the time. It was probably about a few years ago where I used to always talk about, in customer experience training that I used to do for folks, I would always talk about the golden rule. And I got to the point, there was someone in the training that said, it seems to be that we should maybe put that aside and think about how does the other person want to be treated? So instead of like do unto others, you have them do unto you, do what they want you to do unto them. And that was probably the last 7 years that was kind of awake. It was an aha for me, who had been in the customer space for such a long time, training people on it. And I was like, you know what, you've got something there. And interestingly enough, I think I'd already been doing it, but I was saying it another way. And in the end, it was like, no, I was actually trying to meet people exactly where they were in their needs as the empath I am. But I think I was thinking of it differently. But now when you say it that way, right, it's not meeting the customer that's in front of you, or the coworkers in front of you, or any stakeholders in front of you the way you want to be met. It's doing it the way they want to be met. That's a whole nother level of insight, isn't it?
Yeah. I'll add. I love I'm like Heather. I really love the idea of empathy to compassion, because it's understanding to action kind of thing. And the horse that I tend to ride a lot is design thinking, but I really like the overlay here in the conversation, because what Heather was talking about, or what you all have been kind of chatting about the last couple of minutes, is very much about the one-to-one empathy and compassion. And one thing that design thinking helps us do is do it from kind of like the one-to-many. So when we think about it, almost like, I hate to make it sound like leading with heart is always about money, because it's not. But when we think about leading with heart, leading with empathy, and leading with compassion, the better we understand our target audience, whether that's our staff, whether that's our actual paying customer, or some other audience, we can go understand them in depth and with an eye toward empathy, and then distill that collective knowledge into very specific themes. So what are the thematic pain points of your audience? And then instead of being just one-to-one, we're now one-to-many. And if I understand those thematic pain points or thematic challenges or issues, and I can distill all of that qualitative, empathetic view, and then I can turn it into a product, a service, something incredibly unique with value that's going to solve a challenge of theirs. And I think that's why when you look at over the last 20 to 30 years, the idea of a quality product or service, started with like Malcolm Baldrige Awards and all that stuff 30, 40 years ago. And that was really, really important. But when you look at the companies today that are the most successful, they're the ones that are simplifying people's lives, because they found like these compassionate views of their customers that find needs that people have, or desires that people have, or challenges that they have, and they're solving those challenges with simplicity. And we're pulling complexity out of their lives. It's really a fascinating way of not only looking at the world one-to-one, but one-to-many. And it's very helpful.
Early on, like I said, when I was doing, the majority of my background was in customer experience. So we were obviously, design thinking was a huge part of that, because the experiential view, and now I'm obviously more focused on employee experience and leadership. And it's that same view where it's like, how do we design for the employee experience before they even come into the company? And we look at it more holistically. But interestingly enough, in that, the work that I do at Employee Fanatics is really, we don't talk about it in design thinking really. What we do though is we help organizations. We have actually created services around the pain points. So for example, in most cases, organizations, let's say COOs or HR, may hire us, and it's because they want to be able to listen. They want to listen more effectively to their people. And so they don't want to, unfortunately, dive into the employee engagement survey findings or their diversity, equity, inclusion survey findings, dive deep into the comments and boil up themes. And that's what we do. We help them boil up the themes, the actionable steps. So it's kind of like this idea of this organizational empathy and compassion thing, right? Actionable steps. And now they can go do something about it. We can help them with the implementation. And what ends up happening a lot from that feedback is that there's a leadership issue, or there's training needed for collaboration and communication. And we do that, or we coach executives, right? And these are all the things that just developed out of the pains of the people that we focus on. And it was like, well, these are the things we need. And so now we have a framework of the services we provide, and it's all based upon the pain that they have. So it's interesting that you said that. I'm like, oh my gosh, you like speak, but you're speaking my language. All of you we're right here. I knew there was a kinship there.
Yeah. I mean, I find, for example, employee surveys to be a little bit of a difficult tool, because oftentimes you're getting the numeric, the Likert scale 1 to 5 or something in terms of feedback, whereas that open-ended commentary whether it's anonymous or not, right? If you start to sift through that and dig deep, really, it's not uncommon to hear themes across organizations. Please be more inclusive. And okay, well, I can design, for example, different types of team approaches to internal or external challenges that include more people in the process. I can design that as an organization. It takes time, it takes effort. But if I hear the challenge or the pain point of people wanting, what a great problem to have, people in your company wanting to be included. That's a great problem to have.
Yes.
People want to be involved. So it's up to us as leaders to hear that with empathy. And then, to your point, compassionately build a process that includes them, right? That's our challenge. And the more we do that, the better our company is going to be, because then people all of a sudden get engaged and they care more.
So fun.
If I may, so for the listeners, Garth is my boss, so I'm just going to say that. But what I am saying is not because he's here and he's my boss, but he's new to our organization and he's bringing the design thinking to AHA. And I've been here for 5 years, and this is not something we've done before. And the amount of opportunities he's giving our staff to really become engaged and to have input asked of them and then have it be worked on is amazing. It's been great to see. It's also a lot of work, and it's also a lot of it can be a little bit intimidating for people that aren't used to being asked for input, and then also to help. Okay, well, you want to change something. Why don't you come on the committee that's going to be in charge of doing that change? So that has been, so from someone who's having design thinking done to them, which I know Garth would not want me to say it's being done to me, but it is. It is. I know it's going to be good. And right now it's a lot of work, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the products of it. And I don't know if you want to speak to that anymore, Garth, to the people that are listening, but that's definitely something that I'm looking forward to being smack dab in the early stages of right now.
Yeah, I would. So I'll try to verbalize a little cartoon that I like. There's this cartoon where, someone's at a podium and there's an audience, and they ask, who wants to change? And everybody in the audience, who wants change? I'm sorry. And everybody in the audience raise their hand, right? And when they say, okay, well, who wants to change? Nobody raises their hand. And then when they say, who wants to lead the change? Everybody leaves. And the funny point to me about that, if you can visualize that little cartoon, is that the reason that's actually the norm than anything is because we aren't understanding people first about what change means to them and how much they can or want to be included and how to involve them along the way. And because if you think about any organization, whether it's an individual person, a department, or the entire organization, if we're not changing, we're going to be in big trouble. In associations, the types of organizations that Heather and I work for now, we are in a notoriously old 200-year-old business model. Started with like Ben Franklin in the first societies. We have to change. There is no doubt. This is not like a Google change. This is a prehistoric times type of thing almost. And so the only way we're going to do that is if everyone is lifted up and everybody understands what it looks like and understands their role in it. And the only way we can do that is communication, inclusivity, empathy of how hard it is going to be for people to move past the inertia of what it means to change versus be part of it versus even lead it themselves from the chairs that they sit in. So it's a hard work.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And I know I'm deep in that's again, the work we do is all full on change management. It is interesting to see from my perspective as an outsider to most of these organizations, to see the resistance, but also at the same time, like like you were talking about earlier, often, surveys are ones that are ignored. The organizations will do it. They rarely look at the data. They rarely take the time to dive deep. And so the people that are completing those, or for example, the focus groups that we facilitate, when they don't see any action afterward, they become super apathetic. And then the next time you do something like that, they don't have a belief that change is actually going to happen and that their voice is powerful. So in your case, as you were talking about, like Heather, when you were saying, well, folks are kind of like not used to being asked to have a voice or to be included. And that is because most folks don't think their voices mean anything to those who are supposed to be listening, to the leaders around them. And so the more that you do what you do, Garth and Heather, to try to produce, to make them aware that, yes, we want your voice. We expect your voice. Your voice is powerful. It will lead to change. We're not joking here. We are joking. This is not a joke. This is not a psych. This is not a pretend thing, right? Then they're like, uh-oh, well, like you said, oh, I got to go be a part of this. Oh, shoot, I got to go do something. And that means like what I actually do. So it's an interesting dynamic going on, right? Where it's like the realization that the voice is powerful and that it produces some powerful results, particularly if it's looked at in a thoughtful way, in a design kind of way, as you're talking about. And I love the one to many, because I do think, like, I talk a lot about employee experience, and we talk about designing what that experience, that whole journey looks like for the employee. And so there's process and systems and stuff all happening in the background, but in the front, it feels so good. So it's what it feels like, the end result of all this design thinking. It feels really good in the end, but you don't realize how many processes and systems and things that are in place in order to get there,
Yeah, I totally agree. What also came to mind for me, Heather, while you were explaining that perspective, is the idea that when we started, and we're still in the early phases of what Heather and I have been chatting about here. When we started this, there's trepidation around bringing your voice out, right? So for whatever reason, people can be scared, intimidated, non-believers, whatever you want to call it, right? There's a variety of reasons why people don't. And we're starting to see folks in this journey, starting to see some folks come out of the shell. Others are still in the shell. So we're going to start to see individuals in their own journey, right? Which is really a fascinating kind of almost mini study. The ones who I think for your audience to be thinking about are those who start to gain traction and saying, now I have a voice, but with that voice comes a responsibility to participate in the action and in the actual action of compassion and doing something. So no longer can I sit kind of in the back row in school and make comments about the professor, right? I actually have to now get in front and become part of the solution and teach or lead a team in the organization that's tackling a challenge that maybe I raised up. Or I want to participate on a team that's outside of my functional role, and I'm going to be on a team in a different role in my organization that's not my standard job description. It takes risk on everybody's part to be part of either change, but to be part of an organization that's led with heart and with empathy. That takes, everybody has to risk that, opening up and letting that be part of their work life. It's not easy.
Heather, I'm curious to know if there's, if you'd be willing to share this. It is part of the show, and I don't want to leave it out. This is a really special ingredient. But if there's ever been a time when, you were not kind of that leader with heart, you didn't basically pair the empathy and the compassion and really kind of take action on behalf of someone as a leader. I'm curious to know if there's a specific story you'd be willing to share with everybody.
Yeah, there's one that comes to mind. Garth, plug your ears, man. I don't know if you're going to hear this one. This is before you. Guys, remember, I'm talking with my boss here. So I have I'm sure your audience, Heather, has a lot of perfectionists in it. But my field, the veterinary field, is we're probably over 90% of us are perfectionists. And how that shows up for us is a very low tolerance for mistakes, and which is good if you're coming to a veterinarian who wants, and you're putting your pet's life in our hands, because mistakes can obviously lead to death, right? So But perfectionism, I think for a lot of us, and certainly for me, also ties into self-worth. So my worth is high when what I've done is good, and my worth is low as a person if I've made mistakes. So that is a very heavy burden to carry around as a human, and it's a very heavy burden to carry around as a veterinarian or anyone in the healing profession, because just because you do your very best, the outcomes of a case or a patient's life may not reflect that. So in other words, I can get an A in surgery in veterinary school, and a patient can die under my care after I've done surgery or during surgery. So that was a very hard lesson to start learning as a veterinarian, and is still one that I struggle with all the time. But I had a huge blowout at work with my publishing team. And so we make journals for the veterinary profession to read. And I'm responsible for creating guidelines, which are documents that are read really by the whole world of veterinary medicine on how veterinarians could treat certain conditions, or what they should be thinking about if they're doing dental cleanings on animals, or doing anesthesia, or addressing pain management. And so the words we use are really, really important. And since these are journal articles, we use references. So these, sometimes it's expert opinion and sort of what they think is the best thing. That's what some of the things the authors put forward. But other times we put references in for other experts and other data. So our team we had done a very complicated guideline that had a lot of references in it. And these references were very, very important, because this was a guideline that was about life and death stuff. It wasn't about easy things. It was about life and death. So our references got completely out of whack. And they were, if anyone's ever published something that has references, you can just imagine you pull out one reference and all of the other ones all fall apart. And they have to plug it back in. I have to renumber them all over again. It's super tedious work. And my team messed it up, and they messed it up in a very late time in the game. And I am part of the team that made that mistake. And I did not tolerate that mistake at all. And that, because in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, well, this is life and death. We can't be getting this wrong. But I just came in full on mama bear attacking mode, perfectionism just blaring, because my worth is tied to this, and my worth as a person is tied to this. And unfortunately, the people I was working with, their worth was tied to their work as well. So we had two perfectionists going at it. And the amount of anger and shame that we felt that we didn't process for months. We weren't speaking to each other for months. Over this. And I did not come with my best self. I came from a place of fear and low self-worth. And I inflicted the same thing on my other teammate. The good news is, through the power of empathy and a very good HR director, we were put in the same room to hash this out, because it was not going to get fixed on its own. And I came to that grounded and from a place of self-awareness, and realizing what my triggers were, and how this failure in references had now attacked me as a person, and how ridiculous that actually is. Because everyone who's listening, your worth as a person is not tied to your performance. And that is what I learned. And because I came into this discussion with that understanding, I was able to fix that severely fractured relationship. And it taught me so much about being careful with what you bring into a conversation, and where you derive your worth. So that's rich. What you were looking for, Heather.
That's exactly what I was looking for. Holy wow, that's a lot. That's a lot of good. We could probably spend a whole hour unpacking that.
Absolutely. Get on the couch, Heather.
Oh, people have said they come off my show and they're like, I swear I felt like I was on a counseling session with Heather, but I'm not going to go there. But that was really, really good. And I have a lot of those issues. I mean, when you think about even that second talk I gave at AHA on the kind of the adversity side of things and my own personal story, that the self-worth, things don't turn out well, feedback isn't good. And how do I respond? And it's like, I keep getting that message of, you're not good enough. You're not good enough. You're not good enough. And you try to keep it back. Yeah, here's the counseling side. Here's the couch side, right? You're not good enough. You're not good enough. Oh, you got to reverse the thought. Oh, you got to reverse the thought and get out of that cycle of, like you said, worth is tied to feedback. Worth is tied to feedback. That same type of thing, right? So I know the struggle. I know it in a real way. And hopefully those are listening. I'm sure there are plenty out there that are listening or having some of those same struggles. And, I really thank you for that. It takes a lot of vulnerability. Well, number one, to be able to say that and to be able to say that in front of your manager is another thing. It's a whole other thing. This is the first time I've done that. And actually I had it as a model. I thought about this before, like bringing on a team where it's like someone who's, a manager to the other. And I was like, I wonder how popular that would be. But in your case, it just happened to be a natural thing. I was like, I love both these people. I want them both on. Here we're doing it now. So thank you for that. That was awesome. I'm curious now. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think maybe one of your next podcasts, Heather, ought to be having a dysfunctional team on your call and you walk them through the process of gaining empathy for one another.
I would love to do that. I'm telling you, any team that wants to go do that, if you're listening, you got any team out there that wants to do that with me, we can do that and come out with some solutions. And that's what I do, right? Facilitation. So, that's funny. Well, for those who are listening, because like I said, I really do feel we could peel this back and be here forever, but I like to keep it kind of succinct so that people are getting some good messages. What might be for each of you a pearl of wisdom that you might leave the listeners with who they could be at a crossroads in their leadership. They may just need extra motivation this week. They could be struggling in some way. What might be for each of you like a pearl of wisdom you'd like to leave them with today? Maybe we'll start with Garth.
Sure. So Heather Loenser, my compadre here on the call, she has this kind of natural talent of empathy. As she said, it started when she was, I think, 1.2 years old, and she wanted to be a vet. I do believe there's a certain amount of nature versus nurture when it comes to empathy. It's not, for me, I'll just say, frankly, it wasn't natural. And for those listeners out there where maybe they're thinking they don't have that natural muscle of empathy and figuring out how to turn empathy into compassion, into action, whether it's one-on-one with people or whether it's one-to-many in a business, the pearl of wisdom I would leave is that it's like a muscle and you can exercise it. And you can find ways to bring empathy into your personal, your professional, and your leadership life and exercise that muscle and find more value from the practice every day. People talk about the practice of medicine or the practice of yoga, right? So much in our life is a practice. To me, as a non-natural empath, empathy is a daily practice, but it is absolutely invaluable in a leadership capacity. So, maybe that's a selfish point of view because I want to be a better leader, but I find that I can only do it through and with other people. And so if it's not natural to you, find the ways to exercise it. For me, it was design thinking. There's probably 1,000 other ways, but that would be my pearl.
So my pearl, and thank you, Garth, for that empathy shout out. I appreciate that. My pearl, and you guys are going to laugh about this, I think. But my pearl is that I can't think of a leader who couldn't benefit from therapy. And the reason I bring that up is because a lot of what we bring to the table as leaders is our lessons learned. And I kind of listed some of the people that I learned things from as a veterinarian. I learned things from small business owners, cleaning cages in their hospital, and then professors. But the truth is, a lot of us learn a lot about how to exist in the world from our first families. And unless our first families really were very, very well supported, we likely left our first families with some amount of trauma or habits or baggage that does pull over and tie into leading. So the best use of time and the best self-care that I do every week, aside from running and eating healthy and all of those kind of things that everyone kind of espouses, is therapy. So I meet with her every Thursday morning, and it changes my outlook on myself, helps me be a more grounded person, and helps me be able to control my feelings and my thoughts, and acknowledge that not everything I think is true, which is another huge thing. Just because you think it doesn't make it true. And that has really allowed me to be a more grounded baby leader, because I'm early in my leadership session, so leadership path. So if you can figure out a way to afford it and carve out time, I highly recommend it. It's life-changing.
Thank you. That you may be the first that's actually ever said that. Again, there's that level of vulnerability. You pair that empathy, right, with the just openness to put it all out there. And you've done that now a couple of times. So to me, that models what we need in leaders, because your people will not feel comfortable showing up as their full selves if you aren't comfortable doing it as well. It doesn't mean that you have to be crying out. You go to work and you cry all day. It doesn't mean you go to work and you share every single thing that you do with your husband. That's not what I'm saying. It's selective, it's smart, intelligent vulnerability. And I think you've done that in both these cases. You really, to me, have expressed that. So I appreciate both of you. Again, I'm just so excited to have had you on here, and just appreciate you so much. Now, for those who are listening, if you've gotten as much value as I have, and I know you're going to want some more, so we're probably going to do some more on like a LinkedIn Live or something, because there's just so much to peel back here. Go ahead and share this far and wide. We want to make sure that people are getting access to these stories. And there are a lot of leadership podcasts, but there's something special here, and it's in the stories that they share when they aren't so perfect. That's the beauty here. So do that. And then don't forget to go write a review on Apple Podcasts, because that's where on the algorithm, it goes up and up and up. People start to see it and they take notice of what's happening at Leadership with Heart. So I appreciate you all for listening. And again, Garth and Heather, just thank you so much for being here. Just awesome guests.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thanks, Heather. Appreciate it very much.
If you'd like to learn more about the work we do at Employee Fanatics around helping leaders lead with heart, go ahead and visit us at employeefanatics.com. That's employee, FANATIX.com. We look forward to seeing you. Definitely reach out to us. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter as well. We do send out a very robust newsletter with lots of great insights every single week. Be well.